Today I'm here with our House Republican colleagues to do something that no one in the building seems to have done in a short session, and that is to recognize the fiscal conditions that we are in, the revenue decline that we are in, and the constitutional obligation that we have to balance a budget. So today we are presenting a budget adjustment which keeps intact the spirit of our biennium budget that many of us supported, but it also makes adjustments to keep the promises that were made last year.
Vin had mentioned specifically about the promises that we made last year. I want to put on record, looking at this budget right now, once again, the House Republicans are coming forward in very strong support of our primary and secondary education. There's a lot of talk about property taxes and finding a way to lower those. We're the second highest in the country for property taxes. And the number one driver of property taxes are Board of Ed budgets. It is education of our primary and secondary students. So with this budget, we are keeping the promise of fully funding our special education excess costs, and we are keeping the promise for the full intent of 5003 last year, which talks specifically about the education cost share grant and capping tuitions for magnets, charters, VOAGs, and such. All of this is direct relief to our local municipal budgets. It's direct relief to our property taxes. And we respect the fact that Connecticut has to start taking this seriously. With our budget here, we are putting forward an 8.2% increase from last year for education, including the charter schools, VOAG, the ECS credit, magnet schools, and most importantly, the excess cost for special needs. And there's a big piece of the governor's budget that was adjusted that is not being addressed, and that is the retired teachers, the teacher retirement system, the ADAC payment of about $43 million. I would hope by now Connecticut had learned a very valuable lesson about not funding our responsibilities for our retirement systems. We are in a major hole in this state, bigger than almost any other state in the country, by not funding our pension obligations. This $43 million is not being accounted for because the budget is not being opened.
Somebody in this building has to be a grown-up. And if it's our caucus, then so be it. We have a responsibility to reflect reality when it comes to our budget. And this is what it does. Obviously, the major changes in this relate to spending and appropriations, the purview of my good friend who's the ranking on appropriations. But we have taken into account things like the significant decline in sales tax, and despite that managed to preserve MRSA. We've had to reduce the revenue transfer from last year to this year, again respecting reality. And we have come through on our promise to get rid of the highway use tax, recognizing the burden that inflation has taken on all our residents.
We've heard a lot of discussion about ARPA over the last couple of months, and that is sort of the panacea that Democrats are relying upon to make everybody happy. Our budget is balanced without touching any ARPA funds, because we recognize not only is that one-time revenue, it is the last tranche of revenue that the state of Connecticut is going to see. So whether it's $200 million, $300 million, $400 million, that is preserved for us to look at if people in this building want to fill holes for higher education, certainly for our nonprofits who we value, for the unemployment compensation fund, which is continually in peril, or to supplant our high energy costs that are coming in July, and finally for child care. Those ARPA funds are preserved for those priorities if the Democrats so choose. But we believe that leading with an adjusted budget to recognize the revenue shortfall was the way to start the conversation. The difference is we're not willing to spend that money without an adjusted budget. So what we're saying is let's adjust the budget first, which is the fiscally prudent thing to do, and then let's spend the ARPA money second. So I don't think our priorities are a lot different from them. We just don't want to put our head in the sand and ignore the fact that we have a deficit that we need to account for.
But I think it's, similar. If you're running a household and you have a pool of money that maybe you're saving for vacation or the kids' college, until you know what your actual budget is, how do you know how much of that pool of money you can spend? And does it make sense to pay it to put, put the new roof on your house, or should you be putting it away for another purpose? Prudent budgeting requires recognizing reality before you start spending the extra money on the
There are
side.
several things the governor had put forward in his budget that we recognize and we take. Some of those include looking at, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of down equipment here at the Capitol right now. And we had dollars put in the, I need this one, yeah. We had dollars put in the general budget for repairs like that. We're looking at moving some of that to bonding. There's also, we've realized about a $10 million savings in the continued paying down of pension and debt that we have been assured we can take as recognized. There's also, last year, I introduced the Capitol and all of you guys to staffing plans. The staffing plan number that we put in last year for the budget was about 80 million. And OPM and OFA have both confirmed that we have saved well over 80 million by the open positions compared to what was in the plan. So we are taking that number again this year. So that was a large increase from what we had originally planned. We planned about 50 million in year two, so we're going back up to the 80 for staffing. Again, not cuts. What it is just the staffing plan to show how people are hired.
Budget, but we believe there's an obligation to run an adjusted budget. So we need to first convince the other side of the aisle that putting your head in the sand and doing nothing and spending the last tranche of federal money that we have is not good fiscal policy and will only get us into trouble.